both myself and you taking this video, we'll have our own relationship with diet, right? We might think of it as a word where we try not to eat too much. It might be everything we eat and drink. What I want to do here is I really want to get towards the notion of what we might broadly, and we are generalizing, by the way, call a balanced diet. So I guess the first thing we can do here is we can kind of look at the primary makeup of the diet, and there are details beyond this. But if I was to bring in my kind of circle if I put this into here, let's say that this is our whole diet here. So let's be specific and refer to this as the whole diet. Everything that we consume, or at least like the big nutrients. What we might want to do after that is we might want to say, right, well, if I take my ruler, when I put this in here, and I want my ruler to be sort of originate in the very center of this, and I go, right, this proportion here, this to here, and if I rotate this round, oops, didn't mean to do that, got to learn to use my ruler better. If I was to rotate this round and go to about here, and say, right, that bunch of nutrients there, despite my terrible drawing skills, that bunch of nutrients there, they would be what we refer to as carbohydrates. Carbohydrates. So, of course, we are thinking about things like your potatoes, your pasta, your rice, and we're talking here that they need to be 55 to 60% of your dietary intake, okay? On average, there are exceptions to this, okay, but 55 to 60%. So again, we're talking about potato, we're talking about rice, we're talking about pasta, we're talking about bread, we're talking about vegetables. Lots of vegetables have carbohydrate. Think about sweet potatoes, think about carrot. That's what we're referring to when we're looking at those carbohydrate structures. And you guys in your biology, you'll know that carbohydrates, they're broken down into their product of glucose and absorbed into the blood in the small intestine. You guys know that and where that's going to be going to. Now, the next part of our diet, if I bring my ruler back in one more time, here we go. Our next part of our diet, if we go to about here, I'm looking for here like 20 to 30%. So I'm going to go to about here. Okay, this part of our diet, if I choose a different color this time, let's go for a sort of a green, oops, didn't mean to do that. Let me bring my ruler back. If I go for my sort of greeny color here, let's go like that. And let's fill that in. That chunk there, this is what we would be referring to as our fat. Now, obviously, you guys know fat as lipids. You could certainly use that term lipids here, absolutely fine. But by fat, we are talking about things such as vegetable-based fats, oils. It could be meat-based fats that we might derive from eating beef, for example. I'm actually not convinced that's very bright on there, so let me just say fat / lipids, just to make that a bit clearer. We could be talking about dairy products, okay? Those need to make up a part of our diet. And again, in your biology, you guys study these because you know that lipids are broken down into fatty acids and glycerols and are absorbed once again in the small intestine. You guys look at that as a process, right? Here we're simply saying that something in the region of 20 to 30% of our intake needs to be fat. Now, that will be lower, of course, for athletes. And finally, if I hopefully have done this correctly, we can fill in this last block. There we go. And this last block, we are talking about protein. Now again, you guys look at protein in a lot of detail in your biology, and we are talking here about protein being 10 to 15%. I think I've done the chunk a bit too big actually on my illustration here, but 10 to 15% of proteins. And here we're talking about things such as eggs, especially egg whites. We could be talking here about chicken. We could be talking about pulses in the sense of lentils have quite a lot of protein in them, for example. We could be talking about fish, about 10 to 15% of the diet. Now we'll come to what those things do in more detail. There's a big picture of that: carbohydrates for energy, fat for an energy store, but also for insulation, protein for growth and repair. Okay, broadly speaking, that's what we're interested in. Now, the other point I want to make here is a couple of like quintessential points. The first one is that anyone need to get the right variety of nutrients. Okay, so we've seen that in this image, but let's just take carbohydrates as an example. If we just eat white bread all day, that's not the right thing to do here, okay? We need to get a balance. Think about fats. These are going to be things like, we're going to get things like vegetable fats, olive oils, could be vegetable oils, these kind of things that we might consume. We want the right variety of that along with sort of more heavier fats, saturated fats that we might get from red meat, for example. So we must have right variety. Secondly, I'm going to put a bit more detail on this one. We must have the right balance. Now, what do we mean by balance? I'm going to specifically talk about energy balance. So let's just look at 3 relationships of energy. Remember that energy in this context is measured in kilocalories. 1,000 calories is a unit here. 1 calorie is enough energy to heat 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius, just for context. So if we have our energy in that we consume, let's say from our carbohydrates, from our fats, if it equals energy out that we burn through metabolism but also movement, then of course what's going to happen here is stable weight, right? If we consume the right number of calories for the amount we spend, stable weight. Well, what about a different scenario? What about if we were to go for energy I should have found a quicker way of doing this. Energy in is less than energy out. Okay, so we've got the less than symbol there. Well, of course, this is going to mean that we lose weight, we get thinner. This is what a diet would do. I don't want to talk about this but this is in extreme cases what some eating disorders might cause, that you don't take in enough calories for the amount of energy you're burning, and rapid and non-healthy weight loss could occur in certain conditions. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm just giving a general description. And then thirdly, you know what's coming here, for our energy in is greater than our energy out. Think about someone who is, I'll do it as an adult, think about someone who is watching TV in the evenings, is driving from front door to front door at work, he's sitting in an office chair all day and is not exercising at the weekend. If those people spend less energy through metabolism and movement than they are consuming in food, they're going to gain weight. Now that is not in one day, that is over time. So don't worry about having a bit of cake on your birthday. Nothing wrong with that. The trend is this one. It's a trend. Now finally, I just want to sort of mention one other principle, which is the right amount. So obviously, I just want to mention that if we are talking about adult people, women, so if I go women, okay, they're going to tend to take in the region of 2,000 or need 2,000 kilocalories per day, whereas men, on average, many exceptions, are going to need in the region of 2,500 kilocalories per day. And that's a really nice sort of generalization for you to consider. Okay, I think that's all for me. I'm just going to drag back up to that amazingly beautiful and spectacularly colorful pie chart, and we will leave that one there.